Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Ramy and Stephanos. Ramy is a second-year student in our Executive MBA class of 2025, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, his advice for prospective students, the impact of his time here at Darden, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the ExecMBA podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Ramy Stephanos. Ramy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. How are you doing? How's your spring? Can we call it spring yet? I think we can call it spring. How's your spring going?
Spring is actually really, really wonderful. The weather is finally warming up here in Northern Virginia. So trying to get out more, go on long walks with the wife and the kiddos. So it's been really, really nice just to not be cooped up after a heavy winter season. How about yourself?
Here you are. Well, you're in quarter 10 too. I think that's worth mentioning. The very end
Yes,
of the
it
Executive MBA
is.
program.
It is the very end. And it's actually really bittersweet, Brett. I remember us talking a couple of years ago, really, about like doing our interview, and time has moved very, very quickly, and all of a sudden we're in quarter 10. It's the last quarter. Um, it's definitely seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm super excited about getting time back and finishing the program. But I think part of seeing my cohort once a month, where we're all get together like in Arlington for the weekend, and then seeing everybody on the Zoom at night during the week. I'm going to miss those interactions, but I'm definitely not going to miss the final celebrations, as some of our professors call our exams.
Yeah, celebration of learning, I think is what I oftentimes hear.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get into it a little bit more. I'm so glad to have you here on the podcast, and thanks for your time today. Well, let's talk just a little bit more about you. Who are you and what's your background?
Um, so my name is Ramy. I've been in the tech world pretty much since I started my career over 20 years ago now. Um, and started investment banking, then in corporate finance, and then I've been in, I think it's the new buzzword is revenue operations. So I'm doing strategy and operations. Currently, I'm at Google, helping their public sector business expand and grow. Um, and it's a bit challenging with everything that's going on with the government, and trying to figure out. So every day is something different. I know Google is not a startup, but our entity is a startup within a startup that is Google Cloud, which is crazy to me that Google looks at like Google Cloud still as a startup. But it's been super fun. It's been great. Um, and then on the personal side, when we were talking 2 years ago, my wife was pregnant with our firstborn, Jude, and in the last 2 years, we actually had another one. So Chloe, she just hit 6 months. So it's been definitely busy between starting this program, starting work. I started Google right around when we talked, actually, the day, I think it was 10 days after I started, you called me to tell me that I got accepted. So a lot has happened in the past 2 years. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been super fun.
Well, I love that. And I tell people all the time when we talk to prospective students, they're like, I'm just going to focus on the program. I'm not going to have anything else going on. No life stuff, no other changes. We're just going to keep everything steady state so I can focus on school. Like, oh, okay, sure. That sounds reasonable. And then you run into them like a year later and they're like, oh, well, we're expecting a child and I moved. I'm now living in another place. I took a new job. Like this is all very, life does not stop when you're in an
Yeah,
executive
no,
MBA
life
program.
life does not stop. And I think that's probably one of the things that I've learned um, out of this program is just time management and prioritization, right? Like I think that's one of the things that um, we learned in our experiential learning. It's something that was never my strong suit, and I think I've just gotten a lot better because you have to be right between being a new dad, between this program, between work, and being a husband. Like there's so many hours in the day, and you just got to be ruthless in how you manage your time.
Yeah. Only, as you know, a finite amount of time and a lot of things competing for both your time and your energy
Yes.
as you go through these programs. So, how'd you decide you wanted to pursue an MBA?
That's a good question. I've been always noodling on getting an MBA, but it just never felt the right time. And I think when I did start thinking about an MBA was really right around this time. I think I was between jobs and I was looking. I had just left a startup and I was interviewing at a couple of different places. And I was like, maybe this is a way for me to be more marketable. This is a way for me to expand my network since I just moved from the West Coast to the East Coast here to the DC region. And so there was couple of different factors. And the biggest factor actually was the support of my wife. I she's the one who really encouraged me. She's like, you love learning. This is the best thing for you. Like, you're expanding the network. And honestly, without her support, like I would not have been able to do this program. Not just um, support with like the kids and like being gone for the weekends, et cetera, but just the moral support and the encouragement. Like, hey, you got this. Um, and giving me the space to go on global residencies and doing all this, like it's really kudos to her. But it just I realized that there's never going to be a good time. And so I was like, I'm just going to stop noodling and just jump in.
There is no good time. I think that is an
No.
important thing for people to hear. Um, I also, one of the things that I hear from students a lot, particularly you're beyond this point in the program, but coming on the summer months when we get to like quarter five and six, which is effectively kind of the midpoint of the program, I'll run into people at the weekend residencies and they'll say, you know what? I'm so glad that I got started because I'm now halfway through my program. And I think if I would have waited like I thought I might want to do it, I would just now be starting. And I can't imagine that, right? Because when you get to the halfway point, when you get six quarters in, you're picking your classes at that point,
Yeah,
right? Electives are coming up.
it's
It
so
feels
much fun.
completely different.
Absolutely. You're so right. And it's like, what better time to start than now, right? And so, like anybody who's really thinking about the program, like just jump in. It'll be fun. It'll be a whirlwind. It'll be a ride, but it'll be such a fun ride. You'll learn a ton. You'll get to meet great people, and you'll have a blast doing it. One thing I will say is somehow I don't know how you folks do this, but literally everybody in our cohort is such a good person. You folks really do a good job of being able to take the right candidates and the right profile to be in this program. And everyone's been amazing.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, we certainly put a lot of thought into it. When we put a class together, people always ask us, what makes a successful Darden student, or how do we think about building a cohort? We're thinking about the classroom experience. We're thinking about how people are going to engage. Case discussions. You have to be curious about the other people in the room. You have to be open to their perspectives and experiences. You have to want to be a great classmate and teammate. You have to be collaborative. And you also have to want to be a member of a community. The nice thing about Darden's executive MBA program, Ramy, at least from in my opinion, is sometimes people when they look at working professional programs, they think I can either work while pursuing my MBA or I can be a part of a community. And the nice thing about our executive MBA program is that you get both things, right? You're able to work and pursue your MBA, but you also get to be part of a community. It sounds like that's been your experience.
Definitely. And actually, that's why what attracted me to the executive MBA program, because I didn't want to stop working, right? I didn't want to go down and be a full-time student. Obviously, there's like financial considerations, but part of it is also I was attracted to the executive program because, based on the admission criteria and everything, like everybody was pretty much in the same stage almost in their journey, in their career journey. And so there's a lot that you can learn from the folks who are a little bit earlier and a little bit later, of how things are. But it was a great way to be able to interact with folks in the same journey, working currently. And so being able to like, hey, this is what's happening to me at work. You're like, oh yeah, that just happened to me last month. And to be able to talk about some of these relevant experiences that are what you're learning on the class on the weekend, you can actually apply on Monday, or um, and that's actually happened to me in last quarter. I was taking a class called Speaking About Business, which is really talking about like how to curate your message and storytelling. And I was able to, learn something over the weekend and be able to apply it to a training session that I had at work, and being able to like, okay, how do I craft this and do that? So um, it's great to be able to apply things right away. And then I just love the format, and I love that it's quick when it's like 22 months. And I use that word very, very loosely, obviously. But it's 22 months. So yeah, there was a lot of benefits for the executive format that really drew me.
Are there particular things about Darden that appealed?
I had several criteria, and Darden really fit the bill. Basically, I wanted a top program, right? So that like weeds out a ton of schools. I wanted a school with a good brand in this network, or sorry, in this region, and Darden fit the bill. I loved some of the folks that I spoke with, the prospect or the current students at the time. They seemed across the board, so it had a good mix of veterans, technologists, corporate finance, etc. And so you really got a good gamut of a cross section of folks that are all over the industries, to be able to give you a broader perspective. The case method was something that I knew I wanted. I didn't know it. And so I was like, I'm going to be jumping a little bit into the deep end because I've never done case method before. But I didn't want to go to a program where just people are lecturing me, right? Like that was not what I was interested in. Um, so I mean, really, the format of the executive MBA, where it's like once a month, I didn't have to fly anywhere. It was close. I'm glad that there is um, a site here in Northern Virginia. So Charlottesville is beautiful, but I didn't want to commit to driving down once a month there. So I think it really fit the bill and just worked with where I'm at in my career and my life, and I couldn't have made a better decision.
Yeah, it's been great being here in Roslyn. I have been up here in the DC area for about 8.5 years, ever since we moved up here. So we are approaching our 10-year anniversary, which is kind of cool. We had one section of executive MBA students to start, so about 60 students. And then you sort of fast forward kind of 8.5 years later, we have over 500 students up here, executive MBA, part-time MBA, and MSBA combined. So
That's crazy. Congratulations. That's an amazing achievement.
yeah, it's been great, and I think it's really nice to be here because for a variety of reasons. One, you mentioned the accessibility and convenience. Even if you're traveling in for the executive MBA program, we've got three airports within the region. We have one that's 5 miles away from our location here in Roslyn, Reagan National. Train station, if you are a train person, Union Station's just 5 miles away. And then we also have the benefit of 1,600 plus Darden alumni here in the DC area. However, many tens of thousands of UVA alumni here. This is a huge UVA alumni destination. I would say it's the two largest alumni groups, both for Darden and for UVA. Here. So it's nice being here. And of course, things are happening for the university up here. We have UVA Northern Virginia coming online out in Fairfax, which is pretty cool. So it's an exciting time.
No, it is. And it's wonderful because you get to see these alums at different events all the time, right? I know that there's, for example, a venture capital conference happening next week. Um, and, I'm excited because I know I'm going to meet, alums there. I'm going to meet, prior, like last year, or graduates of last year or the year before, but also folks that have been around. Actually, I worked with a couple of alums, and we actually did a career day at work, and you're like, hey, I would never have gotten to meet these people without this program. And all of a sudden you have that connection of like, hey, you're a Darden alum, I'm actually a Darden student. So I was posing because it was all about alums, and you had like this current student, but everybody gave me a freebie on that one. But it's wonderful, right? And it opens so many doors. Been having great conversations, connecting with people through the network, being able to ask questions and like, okay, how did you learn from this? Where did you go? Um, One of the great things that Darden provided was actually putting roundtables with our cohort and alums that were able to talk with them, and so we got to meet some really impressive people through these roundtables, and it's wonderful. I couldn't stop talking about it.
Well, let's talk about what it was like for you to get started as an executive MBA student. So here, it's kind of a tough question, I think, for maybe somebody who's at the very end of their program to cast their memory back almost 2 years ago. Come to Darden, brand new executive MBA student. What was that adjustment like for you?
It was a lot. It was a lot, and um, I gotta say the admin team, the folks that are on site, everybody was super wonderful down in Charlottesville and here up in the Sands Family Grounds. Uh, Everybody was like, "Hey, take it easy. Like no pressure. Don't worry about grades. Grades don't matter. All of these things. Just trying to take the pressure off." But just like every prospective student, you're starting, you're like, okay, I want to do really well. I want to do, I'm going to be the top of my class. I'm going to be, because we're all type A, we're all really, we're all overachievers. That's why we're all getting an MBA degree, excuse me. Um, and so that adjustment of just like, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm here to meet people. Uh, Grades matter, right? Because it's a way for you to say like, hey, am I actually learning, right? But like, no one's going to look at your grades, and no one's going to, hey, like, what was your GPA when you graduated, right? And so I think just that mind shift of like, hey, let's focus on the learning, let's focus on the network, um, take it easy. There's a lot of priorities. This is why we're an executive MBA program. We're all executives. We have a lot going on professionally, personally. Uh, and so that adjustment, I think, probably took me about a quarter. For some, I think was like a couple of weeks. Others took them like a couple of quarters. But it took me really a quarter to like, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm here to, meet people, get to know people. Because at the end of the day, like 10 years down the line, you may remember certain cases that really resonated with you or that were really a sticking point, or you remember that, hey, I made that one point, or this person made that one point. You're really just going to remember the people, the times that we got together discussing certain cases or going on global residencies. And really, that's what um, resonates and helped me kind of do a mind shift during my Q1.
Yeah, I think it's important for prospective students to hear that. And you come back as an adult learner, and you're going to be taking a lot of classes, a lot of different kinds of classes. Certainly in the first year of the executive MBA program, it's all core. And so, um,
But some things
you're
are
going to
not in
be
your wheelhouse, right?
exactly. So it's important to start, think about where you start to where you end. In a class and what you've learned over that. And I think sometimes I've talked to a lot of students who have no accounting and finance background, and they feel very nervous about taking these kinds of classes. But we had a poet, as they're known in MBA parlance, in a prior executive MBA class, who said, like, look, not knowing anything about accounting and taking an accounting class, I knew it was all upside. Like I was only going to learn things, right? I didn't know anything. I'm going to learn something. I'm going to know a lot more about accounting than when I started this class. Like but it's a big shift for how
It
people
is.
typically think about school.
It is a big shift. And to your point, right? Like if I know more tomorrow or today than I did yesterday, happy days, right? And what's great about this is that the program gives you enough to be dangerous, right? Like taking the several accounting courses, you're not going to suddenly go be a CPA, but it now like gives you that insight. It's okay, when I'm looking at a financial statement, I know where, you know, going in, I can now read it, understand it, and be able to move on from it. And so, um, marketing for me was a bit challenging just because uh, it's more of I didn't, it was such an unknown thing for me, but like the marketing professors were great and just like, hey, this is how you think about it. These are the different methodologies to go after. This is how you do certain analysis to kind of get what the industry or the market is telling you and being able to shift or adjust your product in order to be able to find success. Um, and so for me, a lot of this was always like eye-opening, and it was just fun to like learn those things just because the case format allows you to do that through all these open-ended discussions that we have.
Let's talk a little bit more about your academic experience now. Do you have a favorite class or two that you've taken during your time here, something that stands out?
There's actually a lot. Having been in this program for close to 20 months, I've taken some great classes. I will say the electives are a lot of fun. It's super exciting because it's a bit challenging because sometimes you're like, I want to take all of these classes, but there's just not enough time, or they're both at the same time. Um, but there's a couple of classes that Les had, like ETA, venture capital. Um, the marketing class with Luca was great. I enjoyed that class a lot. He's such a great professor. Um, I don't know. There's so many. Yeah, I'll probably say Les's classes, the marketing class, and Doug in operations was great as well. Just because I come from an operations background, and it helped me kind of. I was all on the job training, and it was nice to get like some core competencies and core foundations that I knew, I guess, from the program, from work, but it was nice to get a foundation of like how it works, how to think about it, and just some structures to be able to implement into my day to day. So yeah, look, those are, I would say, some of my favorites.
Yeah, the lesson question is Les Alexander, who has been on our podcast before. We did an office hours conversation with him. Highly recommend that conversation to anyone who's interested in learning more about venture capital here at Darden. Did you come into the program with an interest in VC and these kinds of topics, or is that something that emerged while you were in the program?
Um, VC, I've always been around kind of when I started my career in venture, in investment banking, you're dealing with VCs. But it's nice to get a perspective. And one thing that Les does really, really, really well is he brings a lot of his network is extremely strong, and he brings a lot of folks into the classroom. And so it's great because you'll end up having a case study and discuss, a certain situation, and then Les will bring in that person as a guest speaker. And so you sit there, you discuss, you learn some of the topics and things that we're, trying to get out of that class. And then you get the person, the protagonist from the case, and you get to sit there and talk with them for, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes to be able to say, like, hey, what were you thinking? What this happened, and so on. And so I think those are some of the best things about the program. And Vivian actually um, she was did the same thing for leading an uncertainty and crisis, and it was just great because you're talking to individuals who are just going through massive changes in their organization or in the market, and you're like, what were you thinking? What were you doing? Like, how are you feeling about it? And it's honestly, it's priceless. Where those conversations that we're able to have in class. But to answer your question, I mean, I think VCs were something I'm interested in, ETA, and I think that's really what's great about this program is it exposes you to so many different avenues. Whether you want a corporate climber, whether you're trying to make a shift from one industry to another, um, or thinking about going into an ETA or venture capital, is a time to be able to explore. And it's a way to also kind of as a forcing function to be able to like, hey, why don't you go talk to people that are interested in this, or why don't you go do that? And to be able to have those frank conversations at work or through the network, the alumni network, like, hey, I'm a current student at Darden. I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. Do you have time? And every single person has always been happy to say, yeah, like let's find some time, put it on my calendar, and let's talk about it. it's great because it gives you a safe place to go explore and figure out like, hey, what do I really want to be when I grow up, right? And part of the analysis could be like, hey, I do like what I'm doing right now, and that's what I want to be, but it gives you that space to go explore, um, and really say, oh, you know what, actually, venture's not for me, or venture is for me, or ETA looks interesting, but I'm not interested in that, right? I'm really more comfortable being a corporate climber, and all of those things, I think, uh, give you the like Darden gives you the framework with their career counseling and the professors and the cohort to have those conversations and kind of to be able to help give you vision or a direction where you want to go.
I appreciate that note about exploration. People ask us all the time about career goals and interests during the program, and I always tell folks that most people are just exploring likely a few different paths at the same time, right? Maybe they like what they're doing, they want to continue to climb within their organization, but you're in the program, you got career support, you got all kinds of people around you, you're learning about things in class. Who knows? Maybe something sparks for you. You end up doing some informational networking, learning about a different kind of industry, different kind of role, and just to see what else is out there. Maybe you get an entrepreneurial idea, something that you think you might eventually want to turn into a more formalized venture. Again, just an opportunity to explore.
Absolutely. And it's great because because we have such a broad range in our cohort that all of a sudden you're like, hey, I want to learn a lot about manufacturing. Like all of a sudden it's like you have folks that are in the manufacturing space. You're like, okay, well, how does it work? It actually came to mind recently, just got back from Vietnam as part of our global residency. And it was great because we had some folks that were in manufacturing and we went to go visit Piaggio, which is a company that makes Vespas. And we're sitting there in the factory, and you have these folks that are experts that do this day in day out. So they're sitting there talking. You just get so much out of the conversation that you're like, hey, all of us, some of us, or anyone, like I don't come from a manufacturing background, so like I don't know what to think or I don't know what questions to ask. But they're like, hey, how are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with that? And some of the things that we learn in operations, they're applying that, and so it's just really, really good. Uh, that mix, and it helps explore like, hey, does this look interesting? Does that look interesting? And the global residencies were really a good part of that because it gives you so much exposure to different companies and industries and alums, right? Alums that are working worldwide to be able to have those conversations with.
How many global residencies did you do?
I started thinking I was only going to do one. And after the first one, I was like, I'm all in. Obviously, with the support of Gina, my wife, I ended up doing all four, and I'm going to be graduating in 2 months with a GEMBA, right, which is a global executive MBA program. And so it's been really, really exciting. Those trips are really, 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 really fruitful. Just from the people that you meet, the connections that you make with your cohort, and the exposure to just how things are done differently all around the world, right? It just gives you a more holistic view. And definitely, if you're able to do it, I would definitely, definitely recommend it.
What is the reason for you entered as an IMBA, you decided to work up to the GEMBA designation. What shifted for you in the program? Because when I talk to a lot of prospective students, they're very worried about the amount of time the additional global residencies will take and being out of the office for 3 additional week-long residencies or being away from family and personal commitments. How did you sort through that? What ultimately sort of sparked the shift to the GEMBA format?
Um, it definitely is a lot of work. It's a lot of time commitment. Obviously, you're leaving work for 3 additional weeks. You're leaving the family, especially with me with 2 young children. Um, there's definitely a time commitment. So you definitely got to have the support, both from, your significant other, but as well as from your professional organization, um, through your manager and your team members on the team to be able to like, hey, we're okay with you going to learn. Um, and I think just having those allowed me the space to be able to go do this. And I think what really struck with me is we already, at least for me specifically, I already deal. in my professional life with global partners, right? And so it's really a way to better understand how people think or work or some of the challenges that they're facing from a economic perspective, political perspective, and a cultural perspective in Europe, which is different than Africa, which is different than Asia, right? And to be able to say, okay, when I'm working with someone uh, in a different location, what are some of the things to consider? What are some of the challenges that they're facing? And it just gives you a better and broader understanding. And I think that's really what resonated with me was how everybody's so different, but everybody's also the same, right? And it's just being able to understand the nuances and the cultural reasons, or some things people may react, et cetera, right? And so for me, it was good to learn and really be on the ground and really be able to truly talk to people and the challenges, and also just like the dynamic of like, hey, how's it working with American companies, or entering the American market. In one of my global residencies, it actually ended up being a case study where the business were like, hey, we want to enter the US market, right? And like, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about as we enter the US market, given our industry and all this? And so it's fun because we talk to senior level executives in this business and being able to say, okay, oh, these are the things that you should be thinking about. And you have a gamut of like, we're I think on that Gemba or that residency, we had about 25 students. And so you had a broad spectrum of folks that are all across industries, experience, and we're like, hey, you should think about this, you should think about these markets, et cetera. And it was super fun, right? It was such a wonderful experience.
That's really cool. So you went to Vietnam. What other locations?
So I start off with Morocco. So that was the Africa country. Had such a great time. Yael was leading that cohort, and so we had an amazing time, an amazing place. And from there, ended up going to Germany in the summer. It was a great time there. Just from a cultural perspective, the Euro Cup was happening in Germany at that time, and so just to see a bunch of different fans from all across Europe in Germany to celebrate, and being able to watch soccer at the pubs after the end of the day was amazing. But that was one of the case studies that I was mentioning, was actually a German company asking about entering the U.S. market. Ended up going to Argentina in October, and that was just great because I've never been to South America, and so just learning kind of the way that Latin countries do business and some of the challenges that they're facing. And Argentina is going through massive growth, and just they've had a lot of turbulent times from an economic perspective. And just talking to folks who are like, yeah, we can't plan for 2 years out because we don't know what the currency is going to look like. And so they have to be really nimble. And you're just, we always think here in the US, okay, it's steady, a dollar's a dollar, it's a dollar. Like there's not going to be much inflation there. They're like, well, inflation could be 10% next year, and how does that impact the business? And so that was just eye-opening and just wonderful to learn, how they go about it and do that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Vietnam was just a couple of weeks ago.
That sounds like an incredible slate of
Yeah,
locations, all, as you noted, all different, but also maybe some similarities. And that's one of the benefits of going on multiple global residencies is that comparative view, is that
absolutely.
you get to see and kind of, again, compare across location. My experience, Ramy, just talking with students from the program for many years, once people go on one of these global residencies, they really want to do a second one and maybe a third one, maybe even a
Correct.
fourth one.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's actually the feedback that I got from a lot of my folks. They're like, you know, I wish I did more. If they were not a Gimba, they're like, I wish I did more, right? Like I did two, I wish I did the program. I only did one, but I wish I was able to get onto the second one. And so for any prospective student listening in, I would definitely, definitely recommend thinking about it, keeping an open mind. Obviously, it has to work with your schedule, has to work with your family life, with your professional life. Um, but it really is a much added benefit, and I think is just adds so much to the experience of being here at Darden.
been a staple of our executive MBA program from its inception. Back in 2006, when we launched the program, there was a global residency requirement even back then. All the students went to China at that point. Now students have much more choice. We typically will announce 10 global residency locations for an incoming class, and we'll end up traveling probably to about 7 or 8 of those locations, depends on demand and how that breaks across the cohort. But typically works out to be about 7 or 8 global residency locations. The other thing that I'll mention here, and it may be obvious from what Ramy has shared, is when you apply to the executive MBA program. If you're admitted, you'll be given your choice of formats, and if you decide to accept your offer, at that point you'll choose whether you'd like to be an EMBA or a GIMBA format student. The key difference here being EMBA format students are required to do 1 week-long global residency. GIMBA format students are required to do 4. Now, you can shift around probably up until early July or so, around the time when we announce the global residency locations. And even after you start the program, let's say you are a GIMBA student and you just find that you can't do 4 global residencies, you can shift to EMBA. And let's say you're an EMBA format student and you travel in that first global residency travel period about 6 months into the program after quarter 3, and you really enjoy it and you decide that you want to work up to the GIMBA designation, you can do what Ramy did and do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't officially become a Gemba until after Morocco, right? Like it was always like I'm probably going to do one or two. And after Morocco, it sealed the deal for me. I was like, no, I got to do all of these. And like, got to check with the family, got to check with work, and I was able to do it. And it was easy as sending a message to the admin team saying, "Hey, folks, can I do this?" And it was green lights, and haven't looked back.
I love that. All right. Well, 2 more questions for you, Ramy. Thanks for all your time today. So, what are you looking forward to in the months ahead?
It's bittersweet. It really is. In 2 months, I'll graduate, and so for me, it's really one more, um, one more on the grounds up here in Arlington, and then going down to Charlottesville for LR2. So I'm looking forward to just more memories and spending time with my cohort. But I'm also looking forward to graduating and getting a lot of time back, right? Like this program uh, requires a lot of time, and you from case studies to classes, et cetera. And so it's wonderful. But I will be happy to have my time back and be able to do that. But I will miss all of the people that I got to see regularly, right? And so like the onus is on us now to make sure that we're planning things and doing things. We're even discussing, Brad, I don't know if you heard, but we're even discussing of having an alumni global residency. And so that's one of the things that some of the folks in our team are trying to see if that's something that we can do with the admin office to help structure. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, is just really meet with the people and connect with all of my cohort. I'm looking to graduate.
I love that. Where do you think you would go on the alumni global residency?
The first one, there's going to be a lot of learnings, just because, what's the format? Is the format just the students or the alums, or is it the alums and the family? Where are we going? Like, who are we meeting with, et cetera? Um, but it goes back to like, how do you continue learning after you graduate, right? And so this is one of the things um, that we learned. That's actually one of the classes that I'm in, leading with influence, is like, how do you continue learning? How do you continue to grow as an individual? And really, uh, how do you set that as part of your daily or weekly ritual to always make sure that you're not staying stagnant, right? And so, it's an interesting concept. And so I think some of these things like, okay, well, let's go learn about, I don't know, Nigeria or South Africa or Israel or Japan or anything of that sort. Like it's just let's open and explore.
Well, last question for you, Ramy. You shared a lot of advice here, but a final tip, something you would encourage our prospective student listeners to consider as they think about their own MBA journeys.
Jump in, apply, jump in, and just have fun. You're going to learn a lot. It's going to be challenging at times. Q3, I'm telling you now, Q3 is a whirlwind. So get ready for that. But honestly, the program is amazing. The faculty, the professors, the cohort, there's a lot there, and it won't be a bad decision. You'll definitely not regret it, and you'll definitely appreciate the learnings and the people. And so just dive in.
Yeah, for those of you wondering, why is Q3 a whirlwind? It's the shortest of the quarters. You're taking accounting, finance, and leadership communication at the same time. For most of our students, accounting and finance together, it's a tall order. It's a challenge. But you get through that, then you got Q4, 5, 6. Next thing you know, you're in the elective period and
Yeah.
on the downhill side of the program. So good.
I remember
Yeah,
talking with the class of 24, and they're like, yeah, Q3. I was like, wait, why Q3? They're like, just trust me. Like, you'll get through it. Uh, be challenging, but you'll get through it and you'll come out for it better. And so that's my one advice as well is you'll get through it. Just be mentally prepared for yourself that it'll be challenging. And it's the only reason why I mean, the coursework is challenging, but really it's a condensed time. It's the shortest, as Brett mentioned, it's the shortest quarter. And so it just moves very, very quickly. But my advice is dive in.
that's a good place to stop. Well, Ramy, thanks for your time today. Great to see you as always. And congratulations to you and your classmates as you move into your final quarter and then LR2, your final course as an executive MBA student here at the Darden School.
Thank you, Brett. Really appreciate it.
And that was my conversation with Ramy Stephanos, a second year student in our executive MBA class of 2025. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.